Hello, welcome to Keeping the Beat, an engaging web series hosted live by TNMEA in partnership with the CMA Foundation. Tune in weeknights, Monday through Thursday at 7 p.m. Central Time to learn from and interact with music professionals from around the globe representing every facet of the vast world of music. Today is Monday, May 11th. My name is John Hearnes, and I am a band director at Oakland Middle School in Rutherford County, Tennessee. And tonight's presentation, along with my colleague David England, will be about strong foundations for building young percussionists.
How is everybody? We want to encourage you to interact by replying to the live video stream with your questions and comments, which we will respond to throughout the hour with the assistance of Ms. Carrie Ratliff, and we will be able to get those questions answered for you. Also, one disclaimer, while this is being streamed live, it will remain on Keeping the Beat Facebook page for future reference. So as such, your comments will also remain as part of the archive.
Okay, so tonight, David and I are going to be presenting, like I said, strong foundations for building young percussionists. It's a session we've done several times over the years, including this past December at Midwest. We are both band directors, and we have taught full band, but also percussion for a long time. So everything we're going to talk about tonight is definitely tried and true. It's things that we use in our own programs. So hopefully this will be a perfect opportunity for band directors and future band directors to get some percussion pedagogy going. And hopefully we can answer some of your questions either live on the video, or definitely when we go back and visit the Facebook page again, we'll make sure to answer everybody's question. We also have a website that we put together, strongfoundationspercussion.weebly.com. That has our handout. It has some other handouts we've made over the years for snare drum, mallets, timpani, drum set. There's also a Q&A page there that you can visit and leave questions. We'll be happy to respond to you through that venue as well. So without further ado, we're going to dive right in. We're going to start tonight by talking about choosing percussionists. So for those of you that teach beginning band, you obviously have a pool of kids to choose from, and you need to decide which ones are going to play percussion. Now, everybody kind of has different things. Some people give tests, some people look at math grades, some people require piano lessons to be had before a person can try out for percussion. We're going to kind of take you through our method. First of all, we pull out students in small groups, and we test, if we can, 3 to 5 at most, and take them through a process. We tell them it's not a tryout, it's an evaluation. So we take them through an evaluation process where we start by giving them all drumsticks, and we have practice pads set up. If you don't have enough practice pads, you can use actual drums, or you can use the backs of chairs, a table, whatever you have. It really doesn't matter. But we quickly teach them the grip, and I teach them the grip that we're going to use in class, but I do it very, very quickly. So I'll say, okay, put your thumb and your first finger about right here, put all your fingers around the stick up into the palm of the hand, put your sticks out in an upside down V, try to keep the wrist relatively flat, and that's it. That's as quick as I teach them the grip. And I want to see who's listening, who can follow my instructions. And I watch for that grip throughout the rest of the evaluation process. Then I will teach them how to strike the drum, and I teach them about the full rebounded stroke. So I'll talk to them about stick needs to be up high, and then we're going to strike the drum and let the drum do some of the rebound. and come back up. And David's going to talk about that here in a little bit, but I'll kind of teach them about the relaxed rebounded stroke. And then I look for those, the grip and the stroke, through the rest of the evaluation. We also start by playing 4 quarter notes per hand. So, and I don't really tell them what quarter notes are. If they don't already know, I'll just say, let's play 4 rights and 4 lefts and go back and forth. And we'll go through that, and I'll be watching how their wrists work, and if they're playing with the rebounded stroke or not. I'll take notes, and then I'll go and we'll do 8 on a hand. So basically 8 eighth notes, but again, I don't tell them what eighth notes are. Make some notes there. And then I'll go to 3 levels of echoing rhythms. So for example, the first level, we might play very simple rhythms like, and then I'll have the student echo back that rhythm. And I'll get progressively harder through level 1, but still staying with quarter notes, eighth notes. I'll take some notes in between. I'll go to level 2, which adds some groupings of 16th notes, still mostly downbeat oriented rhythms. And then we'll go to level 3, and level 3, I really try to push them and see how far out I can go and how far they can stay with me. And so it might be, you know, without the rim shots in there, but anything kind of out there, I'll play and let them echo back, and that tells me who's got a good ear for rhythm and also who's keeping a steady pulse. The last thing I do for the evaluations, we'll do a march and play. I'll go away from the pads, just have everybody back up with their drumsticks, and I'll have them walk in place to a beat. So you could do this with the metronome if you wanted, or I just kind of stomp loud so they can hear the beat. But they'll march in place back and forth to the beat. Right there, that cuts several of your students that can't do that. But then I'll say, okay, once they get walking, all right, now click your sticks with your feet. And from there, I'll take some notes, and then we'll go on to 2 clicks per foot. So again, we're dealing with eighth notes while they're walking in quarter notes, but I don't tell them that. And then finally, we do upbeats only. So I'll tell them, now I want you to put a click in between your foot. So foot, stick, foot, stick. If they can get through those 3 levels and, you know, and do a good job, you've got a person that's really got a good set of ears and a good feel and sense of time. So that's definitely a plus for being a percussionist. Any borderline students will reevaluate, and we'll do it through the same process, or we might even make it a little harder. You have to be careful of kids that say, well, I've had drum lessons, and so I have to be in percussion section. And what I like to tell students is, if you had drum lessons, that means 2 things are true, okay? Your teacher had a spot open and your parent had a checkbook, and that's it. So it doesn't mean that you would pass our evaluation for percussion. We do look at it though, because obviously if they've committed to some drum lessons, then you definitely need to take that pretty seriously. This right here, this is not a foolproof process. Sometimes we'll get in there and go, I don't know how this kid passed our evaluation, but hard work definitely beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. But definitely, it's at least a good start. Now, if I could say an opinion, America, I know a lot of people say you have to have piano lessons before you become a percussionist in certain people's bands. If that's what works for you, awesome. I'm definitely not telling you what to do, but if that were the case, I would not be a percussionist, and I would have to play something else, and who knows if I would have stayed in music. So just my 2 cents. I was not a piano player, and I'm doing okay on percussion. So as far as when you get to that point, you've got your percussionist picked, you got your band set. Now you're going to be trying to decide, what do you start your percussionist on? Do you start them on snare? Do you start them on mallets? Do you do both? First of all, I know David agrees with this, so I'm going to speak for him as well. We believe in the total percussionist. So we do not start, this group of kids plays snare drum only, this group of kids plays mallets only. That's not what we do. I tell my students, you don't have to love everything, but you have to play everything. You have to work hard on everything. So what we'll do is, if you have a percussion class by itself, so your beginners are split and you're seeing percussionists by themselves, we highly recommend you start on snare drum first. This surface right here is a lot more forgiving than these surfaces back here that are, that big. So you got a little more room for error. You can take the opportunity through snare drum to really build this, the wrist motion that you need, build some chops, build some arm strength, and then apply the snare drum stuff to the mallet keyboard and to the timpani and that kind of thing. However, David and I both, we teach in separate bands, but we meet everybody together. All our beginners are together. So in that case, we actually start out on mallet keyboards first, because snare drum, as far as the rhythms you're reading in the book, snare drum, they can usually read further ahead in the book than what the winds can do and what the mallets can do. So when the winds are starting and they're just playing whole notes and they're just playing 2 or 3 notes, the mallets are back here doing the same thing. They're learning how to read and learning where that B flat is. And then after they feel pretty comfortable here on the mallets, then we move here to the snare drum, and we can catch them up a lot quicker here than we can doing the opposite. If the band is on number 33 and you're just starting the mallets out on number 1, they're going to be behind. They're going to get discouraged. So we do a lot of stuff here on mallets, and we'll supplement here on snare drum, but we'll tell them when we start out, we're going to spend a lot of time here on the mallet keyboards before we get into more of a routine where we're going back and forth between the two. Take a quick question here from the group before I turn it over to David. It's a good question we have. What is your opinion on kids who wish to switch to percussion after a year or so in band? I'm dealing with that right now, so it's definitely common. I have students, they may even be watching, that played a different instrument, switched to percussion after a year or two, and they're at MTSU right now doing music education on percussion, and so it was definitely a right switch for them. It is definitely a case-by-case basis. It has to be the right kid that has shown that they are working hard on their primary instrument. Definitely not a kid that can barely play on a trumpet or whatever, because they haven't shown you that work ethic that you want to see switching instruments to any instrument. But definitely we'll talk to them, we'll listen to their interest. If it seems like it might be a right fit, usually we'll keep them on their primary instrument. We'll let them start practicing percussion either with their peers or taking lessons, and then we'll agree to visit with them from time to time, see how they're doing. And if they're doing well and they're passing up people that are already percussion, we'll switch them. But you definitely have to find the right person for that. So I hope that answers your question. All right, David, take it away, bud.
Hey, I just want to piggyback on that. We had a student, I know John remembers, that played all the way up to his first semester of his 7th grade year on clarinet. And he was a mediocre at best clarinet player, but he really had a desire to play percussion. And in our band, we had a number of clarinets, and he had a good work ethic. So we let him switch, and we worked with him, and he ended up being a mid-state player. He ended up going to MTSU and majoring, and as a percussion major. So you never know. If you know where there's a will, there's a way a lot of times. So okay, we're going to continue down the sheet. If you're following along with us, we're talking about preparation. And I'm going to go through this pretty quickly, but a lot of people ask me, well, what's the first thing you do on your first day with your percussionist? And so I'm glad you asked that question. First thing we do is we do start with snare drum or pad, whatever we happen to have. And we'll talk a little bit about grip first, you know, and we'll cover that in a minute. But one of the main things we do is we try to set them up for success. We have what we call reference points that we put on the drum and on the sticks or on the pads. And these are just points where when the students are told, check your reference points, they can go to these points and see exactly in just a quick second the places where they need to have their beads and where they need to have their hands and everything. So the first thing we do is I start with taping where the fulcrum goes on the stick. So you'll see that, and you'll probably see it in a slide here. So just get some electrical tape and tape where the fulcrum is on the stick. Now, that's not going to be exactly the same for every student, depending on the size of their hands. So check it out, get them to hold the stick. You know, it's good to have an inch or two out the back when they're done, but it needs to be a good balance point. Generally, the fulcrum is about 1 inch or so behind where you can balance the stick. It's about 1 to 1.5 inches behind where you can balance. That's the best place to put the fulcrum if you can. Once you have it on one stick, just mirror it with the other stick. Don't do each hand, just mirror it so the hands will be same and match grip. After we do that, we put on the drum head tape a place. This is a square here, and it's also there where the center of the drum is. That's the best sounding place to hit the drum. So we want the students to hit the drum there. And then we put tape on the rims where the sticks are going to pass over. And when all that's together, you get this nice inverted V, great hand position where the sticks, the beads are together in the center, and the match grip looks really good, and the hands are hanging right where they need to be. So all we have to do to get to this point is say, hey guys, check your reference points, or say, play over your tape, something like that, and they're there. And it looks great, and so they're already off to looking like they know what they're doing before we start. The next thing we do with the preparation is we get a piece of foam, and we put that underneath the snare bed, in between the snare bed and the drum. So if you can kind of see here, it's in this area, and it just rests gently up against the bottom head, as you can see in the picture, and it just muffles the drum. It keeps it from being so loud, and it gives the kids a chance to play on their drum. There's just no substitute for playing on the drum. I mean, practice pads are great. There's all kinds of practice pads now, but it's just not the same as playing on the drum. And it actually, with the foam on the bottom, it sort of kicks the air out a little quicker because it makes the head tighter. So it actually gives the head a little bit more rebound to work with, which can be good for beginners, especially you know, starting out with a full rebound stroke. So, and it's a lot easier on the ears. I'll be honest, a lot of times we also take these practice pads. This is a practice pad from Innovative Percussion, and this is a core style practice pad, it's the black one, and it feels and sounds great. Just a really good feel and rebound. And these can just be set upon the head of the drum, and you can play like that. They've got a soft, cushiony backing, so it doesn't move when you set it on the drum, and you can play it on the drum. And we actually do that a lot because it's pretty quiet and I can talk over it. But again, the foam works really well too. So That's pretty much it for the preparation. There's a little bit more on the handout there that you can check out. So I wanted to talk to you briefly about equipment before we get to the technique. We use all innovative percussion equipment at our school. That's our personal preference, my personal preference. And they have a lot of great equipment. Basically for snare sticks, you want something around the size of a 2B, something that has that diameter. I like the IPLDs, not just because Lalo Davila was my percussion instructor in college, but because it's a really good stick. The round bead and the taper being a little less at the end. It's made of hickory, so it's a little bit more solid, a little more dense, heavy, not quite as long as some other general concert sticks out there. It just feels really good in the hands, especially for young players. If you want one that's a little bit longer, made of maple, you can try the Ken & Wiley's. They're very similar to Vic Firth Generals, which are also, all good sticks. So anything in that range makes a really good starter stick. And there's a lot of sticks that are out there now that are round bead concert style sticks. So, but we like the IPLDs and we use those. For practice pads, they're great. Like I just talked about, if you can get them. We don't really have the kids use the Gladstone pads, the kind of suction cup ones. We don't use those because they're real gummy for our taste and what we're doing. So we ask them to get a good practice pad or use the one with the head on it that comes with some of the kits. Mapex makes a great kit that has the pad with it. It's a good solid pad that you can tighten and adjust the head on. It fits on the stand so you can stand and play. They have a great drum kit, which is also outlined here somewhere in the handout, which you can look up later. As far as mallets and things used for mallets or timpani, there's several here listed on the PowerPoint. You just have to go through there and see what's right for you. We recommend having hard, medium, and soft for every mallet instrument, like bells, xylophone, marimba, vibes, and timpani. There's not just one kind of timpani mallet. You need, to have at least soft, medium, and hard. So all those are listed on there, and it gives you a few model numbers to check from. The Ensemble 260R that's pictured right now in the middle is a very good mallet, all around good all-purpose mallet. Also, if you notice, all of those are rattans. They have the R after them. They're rattan handles. We like the rattan handles because they don't break as easily. Birch is a great feel, but middle schoolers tend to, step on them, or even when they're not doing something to deface the mallet, they can be fragile. Those dowel rods are not real thick, and so you have to, keep that in mind depending on, what kind of rigor that your kids are gonna, do with the sticks. So rattan handles work really well. And then, like I said, you can go through this PowerPoint. John can just kind of scroll through it real quick, and you can see all the different kinds of mallets. Timpani mallets, we like the more solid shaft mallets. They have a little bit more weight to them. And the timpani mallets are a little fuller in the hands. Those models there, the GTX was a great mallet. So that's just a little bit about equipment. I'm sort of a gearhead, so I could go on and on about equipment. If you have any specific questions down to, point whatever diameter stuff or weight, then, we can talk about that another time. Okay, so we're going to jump into technique. So what is the thing that you do the first time you're teaching them how to play? So I'm going to go through this real quick. There's a lot of information here, but basically we start with I have them lay the sticks down on the drum, and I'll say, pick up the drumstick like you're going to pick up your toothbrush. So they pick it up, and almost naturally their hands are in the right position just by doing that. So pick up your stick like you're going to pick up your toothbrush. Most people don't hold their toothbrush like this, so you'll get a pretty good idea. And then you can just work with it from there. There's some the gimme five thing that we do, the thumb on the stick, first finger across where it's teed up here. The main thing you got to concentrate on is making sure that the students know that all their fingers need to touch the stick, but this is the only place they squeeze the stick. Don't squeeze the stick back here, not now. Right now we squeeze the stick here, and what I mean by squeeze is that's where we hold the stick. You can't pull it out of their hand. You can try that. That's the pressure point. These other ones touch the stick. You always want the fingers to touch the stick because it adds to the quality of sound, and it helps with control. It's what we call a universal grip. If you teach buzz rolls like this and you teach accents like this, then going from buzz rolls to accents is going to be a major problem. It's a lot like teaching good hand position on the clarinet. You don't want to have them lift up their finger to play that A all the time. They're going to kind of roll it back. It's the same thing with percussion. A universal grip is a lot like a great, that C-shaped, trumpet hand position. So it's the same idea. You want to keep a universal grip, and it's listed there on the sheet. So once they have that, we talk about the levers that they use. They're going to use the big lever, the wrist for now. Later they'll use fingers. Maybe eventually they'll use arm. Truly, all drumming is a combination of the three at some point. They can be separated, but generally they work together. So once we get that going, I'll start with the basic stroke type sheet. We'll put a metronome on, and we'll do A, B, C, D off of that sheet. And all it is just teaching them one of the 6 stroke types that we teach. We usually start off with just a couple stroke types so that it's not complicated. So that first one there on A, we'll just get the metronome going. We'll get the metronome going, and we'll just say, okay, play A. 1, 2, ready, go. And we tell them to have the stick rebound full. And I have this neat little stick that I check heights with. And now we don't make our kids play heights like drum corps, but it's a great reference tool to show the students, hey, your stick isn't coming up to where it started. So for instance, the black tape, if we start to stroke at the black tape, it's supposed to come back up to the black tape. So I'll just come down and I'll say, make sure your stick comes back to the black tape, guys. And so what happens there is they're making the full stroke. They're thinking about the where the stick starts and stops, which is the essence of all these strokes. It starts up, it ends up. So they learn this. And sometimes we'll teach it to them the complete full wrist turn, but most of the time it's up here to about what we would call like 15 inches. And so the next one, B, you do 2 strokes. 4, 3, 4. And then 3 strokes. 1, 2, 3. And then on the 4th one, now we've got a nice full stroke all connected. All of these exercises, this is a great sheet. I'm not just saying that because I made it, but the thing about the sheet that's cool is that it really develops connectivity of strokes, which is what you need to be concentrating on when you're developing your students' technique. They need to be able to connect the strokes so that the full stroke and the tap stroke make sense together. So when they start using them in combination, it all sort of makes sense. So we start with the full stroke, then we just go to the tap stroke. And the tap stroke is about 3 inches off the head. We usually say it's where the stick is parallel to the head, about 3 inches off. Sometimes I'll say take your 3 fingers, or if they're 6th grade, take your 4 fingers and put underneath there. And that's about where your stick's going to end for tap strokes. And so it gets them starting down and ending down. It's a softer stroke, but it's the same principle. It rebounds just like the full stroke. So we get them doing that on both hands. And then the next thing we do is we move to the downstroke. This is where the danger begins with teaching technique to the students. And I'm glossing over a lot here because in between full stroke, tap stroke, and all these downstroke, upstrokes, there's a ton of exercises. We'll have them do 8s. We'll have them do a chump chump. All one height, all one stroke type for a long time. And once we get through all of those exercises and we feel confident, because the band book is just going to be full strokes or tap strokes for a long time. And then we get to playing accents. And the band book gets there fairly quickly with that. So And like John said, we've been doing so much mallet stuff. We're on the fast track with drums. So after we get to the downstroke and the upstroke, then we can play a lot. So for the downstroke, the thing that we say is we start up, we end down. So we start up at that about 15-inch mark, and we end down at 3 inches. The stroke still has rebound, but it only comes back to that 3-inch mark. And so we just try to teach them to do that without squeezing the stick or gripping it too tight. Just stop the rebound. Don't let it come back. Then, if you look on the sheet, you'll see there, the next thing is to follow that stroke by a tap. So we go down, up, down, up, down. We do that in A. Then B, now we're going to work on that connectivity. Down, tap, down, tap. And I didn't lift the stick for the tap. I just started where I ended the downstroke. Down, tap, down, tap. So what you're teaching them there is that the tap stroke is just it's a continuation of that stroke. You end it down, now you're going to play the stroke there. Also, if you look at C, we're going to connect to the next stroke. We're going to do down, tap, tap, then come up. That up on count 4 is prepping them for the next stroke, which is the upstroke. So I'm blazing through this. I'll get some questions. John, you can probably see the screen better than I can from way back here, but if you see something, just holler at me. Are we good? Do you need to holler at me?
We're good.
All right, great. So the upstroke starts down at that parallel 3 inches, and then it comes up to the 15 or the full stroke height. It's the weirdest one to feel because you're creating the rebound, and this is the hard one for them to get. Sometimes you can tell them it's like touching something hot and you don't want to leave your hand on it, but you also want to actually hit the drum. You don't want it to be a real light stroke like that. So you got to be careful on the analogies you use, but definitely it comes back up fast. Just like this is down fast for the downstroke, it's up fast for the upstroke. So if you look at number 4 there, you've got, for letter B, you got up, then down. So again, connectivity of strokes. Up, down. Up, down. Now we're ready to do it again. And we'll stay on this for quite a while. Once they develop that, then we're usually pretty good. Then letter C, up, down, tap. Now we've connected all 3 of those strokes. So now you can do all sorts of things. You can do down ups. You can do down, tap, up, down, tap, up. Or you can go back and grab the first 2 and do full down, tap, up, full down, tap, up. All of those things are included in the stroke type exercises. There's another sheet in the packet of stroke type exercises where you can continue that. The next few I'm going to go through real quick again, and then I'm pretty much done. So I just want to talk about the flam, the buzz stroke, and the double stroke. These are the ones that really freak band directors out. So hopefully I can be of some help to you here. Firstly, looking at the flam. For me, and this is not every teacher, but for me, it's really easy to just simply say that the flam is an upstroke and a downstroke played at the same time. If you think about it, a right hand flam, the left hand, if I start the left hand at 3, which for the percussionists out there know that you, most of the time you won't play your grace notes at 3, but we're thinking beginner terms here, and this does work. Just have them think, this starts down like normal, and then comes up, and then this stick starts up, it comes down. So here's your downstroke, here's your upstroke, play them together, and you've got this little swing motion here. You do it off the left, and then you just keep doing it, and it's a swing motion. And then I tell them, I'm a big fan of having the hands play a part. So I'll say, okay, now just play just your right hand, guys, and they go. And we'll say, what's that? Well, we've already done down up exercise, so that's what it is. What's this one doing? Up, down. So we work the hands apart, then put it together, and just take our time with it and really work on the 2 different strokes. Now, as we get better at it, and for 7th and 8th graders, that stop at the top is not your zoom messing up. It's just the way that it works at first. As we go faster, that pause at the top of the stroke goes away. So it feels more natural, like connected strokes. So the next thing on flams, it's not just that, because if you stop there, you're doing your students a disservice. D, E, and F are the bread and butter, because what's going to happen is you're going to teach them this, they're going to be good at this, and then you're going to get to, you know, in the band book, and it's going to go. And all this crazy flam stuff, and they're just not ready for it. So again, connectivity of strokes is your job, not the method book's job. So letter D, flam, then left tap, flam, left tap. So I'm prepping them to go. Okay, the next one you look at, tap, then flam. And you do it off both hands, left, right, left, right, left, right. And then the last one, F, is putting it all together. So this is really common in your band book. A tap before or after flam can really throw them. If you go to the stroke type exercise sheet, there's a lot more variations. And if you do those variations, you'll be prepping them for flam accents and for flam taps. So that's, you know, getting ahead of the game. So use the stroke type sheet with the basic strokes, and all that'll work together. Okay, next stroke, buzz stroke. The buzz stroke is a multiple bounce stroke. Fulcrum's really important, making sure that you get multiple bounces from the stick, keeping the fulcrum. Usually I start like this. I say, how many bounces can you get? And they'll go, I'll say, just squeeze here, let go of everything else. Now, one thing that's important is I make sure that they try to stay on top of the stick. If you have a student that drops the stick down, like I just did a second ago, if you have them drop it down, they're going to lose that rebound. So stay on top of the stick. If you drop your hand down, it's not as easy. A little bit on top of the stick. Then we talk about adding the fingers a little bit and reducing that down. And we do it with both hands. Now what we try to do is dovetail those two, or pull those two together, so there's no break in the sound. Now, as we do that, we're trying to learn to touch the stick. If I was working with 7th and 8th graders, I'll say try to keep your 4th finger in touch with the stick, because there really is some important use of these fingers with the buzz stroke. If you've never tried that and only played them like this, try playing a buzz stroke using these fingers. You'd be real surprised what happens. Technically, if you want to get super technical and geeky about it, the buzz stroke is really 3 strokes per hand, mostly. Most percussionists would say you're getting 3 really fast strokes. That's just 3 really fast strokes. There's a couple orchestral percussionists that you know teach that it's 3 strokes, and they work through a French roll or a 3-stroke roll to get a good buzz roll. So however you do it, just try to connect the strokes and make sure that they're not doing this. This is a big problem. That's why you have the tape. Don't play outside your tape, guys. And through all of this stuff, if they keep this open, a lot of kids want to pull their sticks in here, make them play over the tape. Okay, last thing we'll talk about, and we'll take any questions, is the double stroke. 2 schools of thought on double strokes. One is the kind of old school, you know, John S. Pratt, NRAD, where you do, and you start from the arm and you go all the way down to the fingers. That generally is something we don't have time to do with beginners, and especially in the classroom setting. So we don't really do the mama dada thing with the rolls. Now, I've taught a lot of students this, and it works, but I do what's called stroke and a bounce. And so what we do is we start off, you can see it where it talks about the double stroke. You can just simply use 2 16th notes and just have them say double. They've already gotten used to doing this. Now we're just going to say stop it at 2 strokes. and just say double. Everybody say double, 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 double. And they might go, it's not a double, is it? No, double, double. It's not W, it's double, 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 double. So we just keep them going like this. Then we have them alternate. Now, don't worry about if it's even. That comes later, okay? So we start with that, and then we go to B. Get that going. And then C is probably going to sound a lot like this the first time. I'm going 1 and 2 and 3. That's rhythmically, we're doing 2 30-second notes per eighth note skeleton. Okay, so if we want to get all technical, that's what we're doing. But we're not telling the students that. We're just saying you're doing double strokes. Off the left. Not worrying about accent or anything. From that point, all I'm doing is clicking sticks. I'm saying double, 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 stop. Double, 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 stop. Double, 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 and I just keep speeding up. And here we go. Now, does that sound good right now? No. Is it a double stroke roll? You better believe it. Yes, there's 9 strokes in that roll. So what we're looking at is getting them to that point where they understand that. Then, just like with the buzz roll, we talk about getting the fingers on the stick and controlling it more. And believe me, there are students that pretty well right away within a couple weeks are already. And that's still, the majority of that is still bouncing, stroke in. Sounds real heavy on the first note. Okay, but get those fingers on there, control it more. And then we can start to do stuff like, okay, put your hand on your leg and try to do this. And get your wrist making the stroke. Then we can start doing that and sort of developing the technique. But they get super discouraged if you're like, this is a double stroke roll, guys. All right, ready? You know, it's just really hard for them to grasp that concept, as it is for most band directors. So the thing to do is, for me, is to do that stroke and bounce technique, get them going, and then you can back off and fix some of that technique. And let's just say you're never able to really fix it. Well, they're still playing double stroke rolls, and they're still trying to do the technique. It's going to be better than somebody that's just playing buzz rolls every time there's a double stroke written. So anyway, that takes you through the technique for snare drum. And I've talked a lot. Do we have any questions, Mr. Hearnes?
Yes, we have one here. I'm gonna answer my opinion and let you jump in. Amy Smith asked,
Who?
have you ever considered teaching non-alternating flams first before alternating flams? Amy, I actually start teaching flams all on the same hand first. I'll do an exercise where I'll have them say, okay, right hand up, left hand down, and I'll say 4 full strokes in the right hand, quarter notes. So we'll do 4. And then 4 tap strokes in the left hand. So we'll do 4 quarter notes there. And then I'll do 8 quarter notes of those strokes together. Do 8 of those, and then put a break in, and then do the same thing off the left hand. So we kind of deconstruct the flam and just pay attention to the right hand doing full strokes and the left hand doing taps, and then trying to do those together. I'll usually teach that before I go into the stuff that David's got on the sheet with alternating. But David, what do you think?
So again, I am glossing over a few things here and for the sake of time. But when I teach them a flam, if we teach right hand flam, we'll spend some time on the right hand flam. And we will do some consecutive flams, maybe with some space in there, and talk like what John was saying with full strokes and tap strokes. Most of the literature they're going to play is going to use alternating flams of some kind. So I really try to kind of dwell on that especially with a lot of the rudiments having alternating flams, and just work to connect those strokes, like I said. But no, I think, you know, they have to have this concept down. But I try to spend too much time on it, primarily because I know what will happen is this will be their default sticking for me a lot of times. But there's nothing wrong with that. That's actually a part of the pedagogy. That's what I would recommend doing, depending on how much time you have. You know, if you just need to get there, you know, this might be a quicker way, but definitely doing consecutives is fine. You know, nothing wrong with that.
We have one more question for you. Do you use these packets in class at all? And does that change depending on the makeup of the class? And my 2 cents is, yeah, we do use supplemental materials like this a lot. If we have a full band, we might say, okay, the winds are doing long tones, percussion, let's work on this line off the page. If we're not able, like, we both teach with 2 directors, so we can always, one of us can pull while the other one stays in class. So we might pull percussion and do this, but these can also be used as supplemental when you're doing things even out of the band book. If you got a warm up or a scale thing the winds could be doing, you can definitely use these as supplemental materials. David, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, totally. What we use these, most of the time we use these in pull-out sessions where I'll take them out and we'll sort of dissect technique a little bit, but I always apply it to what they do in the book. For instance, we use essential elements, and number 86 in the book, they have an exercise where it does this. It goes 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So what I have them do is I have them play the whole thing right hand lead and do down up. So they go, and then this is all one height, and I tell them to think about the eighth note. Sometimes we do it so their hand is doing eighth notes the entire exercise. So what I'm saying is I try to take these and apply them, especially line 5 of basic stroke types. When we get into flams and the book is gone, you know, crazy flam stuff that they add in, we'll maybe do letter D and E and F, and I'll say, okay, now this is like number 34 in the book, and then we'll get 34 out. And so they cut and paste in their head what we just did technique-wise to the book or the literature or whatever.
All right, so we're going to talk briefly about some mallet and timpani stuff, and then move on into some other resources for you. So like we said in the beginning, David and I both start on mallets first, just because the winds are moving really slowly, and the mallets can move slowly with them as well. Because in my opinion, the most important technique, the most important concept a snare drummer can learn in the early part of their studies is the proper technique, the grip, the stroke types, the approach to playing the drum. For mallets, we believe the most important skill they can learn is reading the music off the page. And I was guilty of this all the way through high school. Is I would memorize a passage and then look down and play it from memory, or write in all the note names or whatever. You don't want your brass players doing that. You don't want your woodwind players doing that. You don't want your mallet players doing that. You want them reading off the page like everybody else. So when the winds are moving slow, the mallets are moving slow. So definitely want to start there. Still talking about technique, although now you have a much thinner shaft to deal with, but you're holding the mallet pretty much the same way you hold the snare drum. And that's why we talk about that universal application. The way you hold the drumstick, you hold the mallet, and the timpani mallet the same way. The only couple of things for mallets that we want to talk about here, if I can move the camera a bit. First of all, whatever passage you're going to be playing, you want the kids in the middle of that passage. But so many times, it's kind of like those saxophone players you have, their neck strap's way low, so the sax is down here, but they just kind of bend like this to play it instead of tightening the strap up. It's the same thing. You'll have a kid, the music stands way up here, and they're standing way down here, and they don't realize that you can move. You can move the stand to be in front of your body. Put your body in front of the middle of the passage that you have that you're going to be playing. So, if I'm in the beginning band book and I'm playing from a B flat, a B flat to an F, then I'm going to stand here in the middle of that passage. And as my range gets bigger, I still want to put myself in the middle of that passage. You want to keep the eyes on the music and use your peripheral vision here, the edges of the vision to see where the notes are and to guide where your mallets are going while your eyes stare at the page. So when I'm talking to mallet players, you hear me harping a lot to them, eyes on the page, eyes on the page. If there's a larger jump, when they get into a larger range of music, there's a big jump, steal a glance down, but you want to bounce up quickly just with the eyes so that your head stays right there looking at the page. But another thing that you have to watch out for mallet players is especially those that are converted piano players. A lot of times piano players on mallets can read really well, but they don't have hands. They don't have chops. So we want to make sure that we're building snare exercises to help build hands, strength and dexterity, but also finding ways to do that on here as well, so that you're not just dealing with modified piano players, people that can read but don't have any hands to play, Porgy and Bess when it finally comes time for them to play that xylophone part. And also timpani. I don't play timpani like this, but I teach timpani to beginners to hold the stick, the mallet, just like they do the drumstick at first, because I want it to apply across the board. Snare, mallet, timpani, they're holding the stick the same. As they get older, you can get into the thumbs on top grips and so forth, but want to make sure that they're applying as much as they can across the board. From our handout, when you look at it, we have other things you can check out, but a nice thing to remember on timpani is they don't play in the middle of the drum, they play closer to the edge. The middle of the drum sounds kind of like dribbling a basketball or something, so get to the edge. And an old Lalo Davila trick is take some Post-it notes and put the Post-it notes over the sweet spot of all 2 or 4 or however many drums you have, and as you're playing, listening for that tick to happen of you hitting the mallet on the paper. And when you get used to where that spot is, remove the Post-it notes. But so that's kind of our venture into timpani and mallets there. But one thing we do want to talk about very briefly and get some more questions here is you have to, for those of you that are non-percussionists, you have to understand that percussion is a different animal back there, and for what we are required to play, and for what we find enjoyable to play. I always say I love listening to Granger, and I think it's kind of okay to be playing it. I hate rehearsing it because it's pretty much resting the whole time. And then I count 500 measures of rest and hit one cymbal with soft stick. And that's my part when we play Granger. So you have to keep in mind that, these parts that we're doing, they may be boring, they may not be challenging, they may not be developing my hands as a percussionist. They may not be developing my reading skills as a mallet player. So the best way to supplement that is to get your kids involved in solo and ensemble stuff. Right now, we both write for Roll Off. Roll Off has a ton of music from solos, duets, trios for those young kids, all the way up to large ensembles. Percussion ensemble is what kept me as a player going through the spring when I was in high school, because I was bored of concert band. It was not very challenging. I could play all my parts the first couple of days. So it was percussion ensembles where I was challenged, where I found the passion for drumming, and kept me in band. So definitely consider, no matter what level, if you have beginners, you have all the way up through high school and college, getting them involved in playing solo and ensemble lit would be definitely recommended. And in our handout, we have a few ideas for what solo and ensembles could be, and also kind of a breakdown of curriculum from beginner through pre-collegiate. So definitely check out that handout. But we have just a few minutes, and we want to nail a couple of questions here before we go. So we got one here. It says, how do you balance the relative lack of difficulty for beginning mallet players versus wind players in terms of staying engaged and pacing? Oh man, that's a good one. At the beginning level, when you're dealing with the beginning band book, if the mallet players are doing it right, they're doing everything like the winds are doing, they're reading the music off the page. I found they all seem to think it's about the same difficulty, that it's not super easy for mallets and really hard for wind players, unless it's some kind of a range issue for winds. Where I notice it's a problem is the other way, is when we don't spend a lot of time on mallets for some reason and the winds get ahead of the mallet players, then it becomes a battle to try to get them caught back up, because no one likes to be behind, and they don't like a class that can read number 50 out of the book and you can't. So it creates a definite negative reaction to these guys back here, and you don't want that. So I haven't seen that to be much of a problem, at least in my experience. David, you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I think the thing that makes it difficult for them is honestly the reading. I mean, for some reason, I guess it's because they have so many different instruments that they're learning to play. The mallet reading comes slow. At least all my guys at Blackman Middle. That's the thing that they're usually the most lacking in. And motivation is the thing. And I think what John said about percussion ensembles is absolutely true. You have to do the work playing. We've had a great success with doing chamber groups, small groups, especially learning mallet stuff. So the books John and I did, Rhythmology, have a lot of duets and trios that have been really engaging for our students, especially on mallets. And it's been different for them. They're not playing a flute duet on mallets. They're actually playing something that's pretty cool for them to play. So there's lots of different resources that you can go to help with that if you feel like your guys are bored. But at the same time, I think John addressed a lot of that just in talking about the percussion ensemble and different things you can do to help with that.
Now, David, you've been in schools where you were just the only band director. So let me ask you this one. For schools who don't have two directors or have the option to supplement beginning percussionist growth, what are some ways to implement that important percussion ensemble time?
So what I did when I was teaching by myself, I had a couple of schools a day, and we would have ensemble days, and we would just give up. We would use the day of class to just do ensembles, and it wasn't giving anything up at all. It was awesome, and we still do that with our bunch at Blackman Middle, and they love it. They have 1 day a week where we do nothing but chamber groups. And so what I did at that time is I would work with a percussion ensemble a little bit and have the winds players paired up working on their stuff. And my program was much smaller then, when I was doing those schools. So it was a little easier, but we did do percussion ensemble. We just took a day of class a week and we made it that. Now, if your numbers are, really big, like it is at Blackman Middle right now, or at Oakland where John is at, and that's, you're one person, it may have to be after school or before school. There are some books coming out now that I've seen, some method books that have percussion ensemble pieces for the students to play while the winds are playing scales or playing, different exercises. So you can check those out. But honestly, just you being in front of them, working with them on percussion ensemble piece, that's what they really want.
And we've got a request. So since it's been requested, I'll show a couple of resources I just happen to have here with me. Being at home and not at school, I don't have as much as I usually do, but talking about small ensembles, we wrote both of these books, Rhythmology and Rhythmology 2. Hey, you got a copy. These two books are filled with, basically, it started as just stuff we were writing for our own students. So we saw a need for a couple of our kids to play snare duet, and then we just write them one. And eventually they turn into those books. So even if you have a very small percussion section, resources like that are great, because these books have solos, duets, trios, and quartets all in there. So suggestions for resources to help non-percussion band directors who don't feel proficient in teaching beginning percussion. What are some places to help them learn some of that pedagogy? So definitely checking out the Percussive Arts Society website, looking for resources through that. Our website we mentioned at the beginning of the video, strongfoundationspercussion.weebly.com. We'll have some stuff. And David's the same way. You can reach out to us anytime, email or Facebook or whatever. Hey, here's 5 questions I've got on percussion, and we'll be happy to respond. And I think I said there's a Q&A on that Strong Foundations website as well. David, other resources that you have? Yeah,
there's a wealth of information, on YouTube. If you go to reputable players, I know Bill Bachman has a lot of good technique stuff. He's a really great teacher, and he got some good stuff out there that you can check out if you're looking for snare drum. There's a wealth of information on mallets as well. Different drum companies have educational material on their websites you can look at. And like John said, we're going to continue putting things up on our site. And I'm going to do a little session on the basic stroke sheets like I did tonight, but a little bit more detail just for the website, and put that up in the coming days for sure. We got a question from Ed.
Yeah, it looks like we got maybe one more, and then we can wrap up. By the way, continue to ask questions on the Facebook page. We're going to answer any and all questions that you have. But this guy, Edward Frataggi, is that how you say it? Hey, Fry baby. He's talking about the beginning percussion parts in band methods maybe being more designed to accompany the wind parts as opposed to developing percussionists. So he has done a lot of writing of his own things to accompany those books. And he asked, do we do rewrites ever due to that scenario? Sometimes, usually Ed, when we're doing stuff like this, and I do supplemental, kind of like David's page that he had up there. We'll do more of that to go along with what's going on with the wins in the book. But honestly, I don't do a lot of rewrites for specific, like number 33 in the book, and then here's what I want you to play instead. And honestly, that's a time thing. Just haven't taken the time to do it. But David?
So I definitely use the basic stroke types sheet that I was using earlier and the stroke type sheet to supplement, again, just technique and try to weave it into as much of what they have as possible. And, you know, for beginners, it is a challenge. You do have to supplement because there's so much for them to learn. It's not as difficult for 7th and 8th grades. As a matter of fact, the Foundations for Superior Performance book that so many people use has a really good percussion exercises in it, and a lot of them are standard rep exercises that have been around for years that, you know, most drummers, percussionists play, and they're fit right to the exercises the winds play. But on the beginning level, if it's something that's just super easy and we don't have a lot of time, then we a lot of times will just default to you know, reading rhythm sheet. I mean, quite honestly, with percussionists, again, with the reading, I mean, they have to be, I tell our percussionists, you have to be the best rhythm readers in the band. You have to be able to school everybody when it comes to rhythms. And they really kind of take that to heart and try to be the best at it. So, you know, giving them, you know, in the essential elements, you go to page 42 and 43, back of that beginner book. And all right, guys, while we're doing this, you're going to play 1 through 36. And every half note's a flam, or every quarter note's a flam, and every eighth note's a buzz stroke, or however you decide to do it. And it gives them a little bit of a challenge to add to it. So there are things you can do, but I would be in agreement. But I kind of tell our guys that, look, you know, you're learning so many different instruments. So if they're super bored, have them play bass drum and all the accessory stuff, mallets and snare drum all at the same time during the exercise. You know, just spread it around, let somebody cover each part.
That's cool. So we could talk for several more hours on percussion and not even scratch the surface, but unfortunately that's our time for today. So please keep reaching out, utilize our website, ask questions, and you know, we're here to help. We're not here to sell products or, you know, promote one company or anything. We're here to teach percussion. It's what we love to do. We appreciate your time today, but we also have to tell you that you should tune in weeknights, Monday through Thursday at 7 p.m. Central Time to watch Keeping the Beat live. And remember to tell your friends about our program. Tomorrow night, Jeff Nelson, professor of horn, Indiana University Jacobs School of Music, will be presenting a topic, fearless performance in music and in life. And including that session and further on, this is a powerhouse week coming up for Keeping the Beat live. So we're definitely the weak link in this chain. There's some great stuff coming up. So please come back tomorrow and keep coming back. Presenters who wish to apply to host an episode need to send applications via tnmea.org. So ladies and gentlemen, stay safe, stay engaged in music and in learning, and we hope to see you sometime in the future. Take care.